Hello, you mighty fine people, and welcome back to the channel. For Honor's story is easily the least relevant thing about the game, and whilst the multiplayer gameplay should always, and thankfully is, the priority of the developer's attention, the ever-expanding lore of the game gets some additions every season. Last season, Mirage, the land of Heathmoor was overcome with arid droughts and mass water shortages across Ashfeld, Valkenheim and the Mire, whereas this season sees the complete opposite, a torrential downpour, water en masse that threatens the land just as much as the drought did. No matter what Heathmoor goes through though, the most significant changes to the land can be attributed to one person: Apollyon. While I'm willing to bet the majority of players know who Apollyon is, there might be some that don't, and for those, I highly recommend playing For Honor's story mode, as this video will contain some spoilers. You have been warned, and yes, this is a video about story mode in For Honor.
Is this a joke?
No, I'm not joking. Though specifically, I want to look at the introduction of Apollyon, and how well the writers managed to convey her character in the brief scene in which she's introduced. This scene takes place at the end of the third mission within the night section of the story, the mission titled The Blackstone Legion. But before we get there, let's run through the story so far so we're all on the same page. Please keep in mind though, that I won't be including observables and the Hear the Tale snippet on the mission select screen. First of all, for sake of pacing of the video. Second, these are all optional, meaning the strength of the story has to stand on the merits of its mandatory content. And lastly, including them adds an unfortunate amount of ludonarrative dissonance, which only adds more lore via a gameplay mechanic. For those who don't know, ludonarrative dissonance is where the story of a video game, told by the narrative, conflicts with its story told by its gameplay, and For Honor's observables and steel pots are a perfect example of this. For example, in Mission 1-6, the objective is to escort a ram to the gates of Sverngard, fending off any would-be attackers.
Catapults! Keep the ram moving!
However, the player is free to leave the ram and check side paths for observable points of interest. Observables are narrated, and it's natural for players not to move on until they've heard what has to be said, completely contradicting the urgency of the situation.
The ancient name for these structures is Trilithon. I asked a Viking once what she thought they were for. She didn't know. She said they'd just always been there.
Or, players could be ignoring enemies in order to smash pots for a small amount of steel.
There was no way home but forward.
And the narrative dissonance can be quite telling. While I personally love the observables and pre-mission narration at the beginning of the story, they actually kinda do more harm than good. I'll explain later. Anyhow, tangent over, let's recap the story so far. Mission 1-1, Warlords and Cowards. The Warden is a mercenary hired by Warlord Hervis Daubeny. Daubeny has pissed off the Blackstone Legion, a bunch of knights all clad in black and orange, and his keep is under attack. The Warden fights off the attackers, doing his best to defend the castle and support Daubeny's forces. However, both the walls and doors are breached by the enemy, and the leader of the assault, Holden Cross, demands Daubeny face a trial by combat for his sins. Let's just say Daubeny is hesitant.
Right now. What? Fight you? That's not a trial. That's an execution.
Holden Cross insists that Daubeny fight his second in command, another warden named Adamar. Daubeny, being the brave and wise tactical leader he is, appoints the warden as his second, and the warden agrees to fight the duel, understanding that refusing would only lead to the death of himself and all of Daubeny's forces.
All right then.
If I refused, there would be a slaughter.
After winning the duel, the warden acknowledges to himself that they're still at the mercy of the Blackstones. Holden Cross recognises the strength and valour of the warden and enlists him as a Blackstone knight. With Daubeny's trial won, Holden and the Blackstones leave, with the warden in tow.
We're finished here.
Mission 1-2, and Stay Out. A battalion of Iron Legionnaires are under siege at the Sanctuary of Harrogate by the Vikings. The Iron Legion Commander Stone has requested backup, and the Blackstones have sent the Warden, and only the Warden.
Blackstone!
None too pleased with only being granted a single warrior, Stone directs the Warden to lead the counter-assault. Slowly but surely, the Warden and the rest of the Iron Legion take back the Citadel by taking 3 crucial battlefield locations and killing the Viking force's Valkyrie leader. During the battle, the Warden remarks at how good the Conqueror Stone is. After the battle ends in victory, Stone compliments the Warden, noting that he would have been fine on his own. The two shake hands.
Not bad, Blackstone. Not bad at all. Pretty sure I could have done it by myself, but...
Mission 1-3, the Blackstone Legion, and the crux of the video. The Warden is tasked with driving out Vikings from an outpost in Ashfeld. After that, the next task is to investigate the Iron Legion deserters. This is the 3rd mission in a row where you will play as the Warden. However, on this mission you are accompanied by Stone the Conqueror from the previous one. This serves a fantastic story purpose, as Stone is the only trustworthy ally to the Warden at this point, at least from the Warden's perspective. This is important because, despite clearly having their own personality and goals, the Warden acts as a proxy for the player. The Warden is clearly doubtful about the Blackstone Legion in the first mission. The Warden joins the Legion to protect Daubeny and his men. In the next mission, the Blackstones send only the Warden when the Iron Legion needed more than one man for reinforcements. Not much is known about the Legion by either the player or the Warden. We learn about the Blackstones through the Warden's experiences. At this point, it's only natural to assume that the Blackstone Legion is quite powerful. The mission of the same name actually begins with an interesting contrast. Where Holden was before content to send the Warden into a large-scale battle alone, he shows concern at the Warden's confidence when backup is then refused when offered. The Warden, however, had no intentions of going alone. After refusing Holden's help, the Warden rounds the corner to see a newly clad Blackstone waiting for him. Stone, despite the change of colours, was Iron Legion and worthy of the Warden's trust.
Stone was Iron Legion. I trusted him.
Together, Stone and the Warden fight their way through the Vikings and push through to the outpost. After clearing out the Viking threat, the pair make their way through the rear of the outpost into the forested area beyond. Not long after, they are attacked by a peacekeeper who is clearly not happy to see their colours.
Die, Blackstone dog!
A little while and several skirmishes with more Iron Legion soldiers later, the pair come to where the rogue Iron Legionnaires are located, and the Warden demands answers. The opposing conqueror, clad with the colours of the Iron Legion, questions as to why a Warden would fight for Apollyon. Remember this part because it's really important.
What's a Warden doing fighting for Apollyon?
Stone readies his flail, and again the Warden demands an answer as to why the Iron Legion have abandoned their people. The Iron Legion attack, and despite being outnumbered, the Blackstones defeat the deserters. Immediately after the fight, more Iron Legion soldiers storm into the enclosure and surround the Warden and Stone. Stone is shot with an arrow, and just as the Warden is prepared to fight, it happens, and the player is introduced to Apollyon. Immediately making an impression by impaling a soldier and throwing him in a display of strength. Continuing her vicious assault, she takes out 2 more of the Iron Legion with calculated brutality. While disarming a fighter, she is cut by a soldier, whom upon she immediately retaliates, ending his life. An Iron Legion warlord tries to strike but is stunned and beheaded with ease by the obsidian warlord. Towering over her foes, Apollyon advances towards the Iron Legion, now trapped, finding themselves boxed in by Blackstone troops. Apollyon steadies her blade as a peacekeeper and conqueror oppose her. Parrying the peacekeeper's weapons, she effortlessly evades the conqueror's flail and strikes hard against his shield. The Warden joins the fray and strikes at the conqueror, all the while Apollyon tackles the dual-wielding warrior. The peacekeeper successfully parries one of Apollyon's strikes and riposts with a well-placed dagger stab. With the pain only fueling her, Apollyon stuns her attacker, before separating her head from her body. The Warden, meanwhile, is about to be dealt a fatal blow when the conqueror is disarmed and dismembered. Removing the dagger from her body, she helps the Warden to their feet, as Holden Cross and the rest of the Blackstones arrive on the scene, surrounding the Iron Legion. After a brief pause and a nod from Apollyon, the Blackstones sheath their weapons, much to the confusion of the Iron Legion, whom still sit at the mercy of Apollyon's warriors. Taking advantage of the situation, 2 knights of the yellow and green rush at Apollyon in an assassination attempt, which is easily countered and the 2 are subdued. Apollyon turns to the rest of the Iron Legion still on their knees. And here is where we learn the rest of everything you need to know about Apollyon's character, and simultaneously almost everything you need to know about the Warden.
Do you know what kind of creature waits for its own slaughter? Sheep. Sheep.
No.
After executing the sheep as put by Apollyon, her legion slaughters the rest of the knights knelt in surrender. The 2 whom attacked, however, are rewarded with a new home amongst the Blackstones.
Welcome to the Blackstone Legion.
The Warden's concerns realized, the mission ends with Apollyon's piercing gaze upon our playable proxy.
I had my answers, but too late. And the Warden's oaths are not lightly broken.
So that's the story. The question is now, how well does it introduce Apollyon, and how well does it inform her character and that of those around her? Honestly, the answer is purely dependent on whether or not the player has listened to the tale before missions or found observables. Without those things, the story masterfully shows you, through the actions of Apollyon, exactly who she is and what she stands for. It demonstrates her tenacity, her combat prowess, her intimidating presence, and it even shows you that despite her strength and skill, she can be wounded by any blade, like any other warrior. Not having the observables be a factor also contributes to a sense of misdirection about who actually leads the Blackstones. The name Apollyon is first heard in the game's 3rd mission, and right at the end too by the Iron Legion Conqueror. Players up to this point could be under the impression that Holden Cross is the warlord of the Blackstones. There's evidence to back this up too. The first lines of dialogue spoke in the first mission is an inner monologue of the Warden, saying they served the wrong warlord Daubeny. Afterwards, the name given is Holden Cross.
That day I learned that I was serving the wrong warlord. Hervis Daubeny.
Defend the walls!
The day that I met the Blackstone Legion. And Holden Cross.
Holden Cross also knights the Warden into the Blackstones, and acts as commander as he deploys him on 2 missions after the fact. Seeing Holden prevent the Warden's intervention at Apollyon executing the Iron Legion, and doing so without a word, shows the player that he isn't the pack leader, a fact solidified in the following mission, whereas the player takes control of Holden Cross. Of course, this is where my assessment is heavily contradicted by the introduction dialogue to Warlords and Cowards, where it's made abundantly clear who runs the show. Take a look.
I am Apollyon, warlord of the Blackstone Legion. In that year, I sent one of my commanders, Holden Cross, to punish a betrayer.
And if you took the time to find observables in this mission, one clearly points out Holden as second in command. Now, whilst I do love the extra lore provided both by the observables and the mission intro narration, in these 3 first missions I can't help but feel that they almost undermine the reveal of Apollyon. Now that's just my opinion after all, so take it as you will. I certainly wouldn't like the observables removed, but I'm not quite sure I can think of a better alternative here, so it's seldom worth complaining about. However, I do think it's worth mentioning. However, these first 3 missions also do a good job of introducing what kind of character the Warden is. At first, a stalwart defender ready to defend as per the instructions of the warlord in charge, recognising and adapting to the changing flow of the battlefield, and putting his or her own life on the line in a trial by combat to prevent a slaughter. The second mission shows how capable a commander and frontline fighter the Warden is, knowing that the Iron Legion needed more troops, and that the Blackstones provided only 1. The Warden still does everything possible to win the day and prevent further Iron Legion casualties, even making a friend by the end. With the third mission, the Warden's frustrations are vocalised for the player at several points. The anger the Warden directs towards the deserters is that of a sworn knight seeing others with similar cause abandon their people when they need protection from invaders.
Deserters? I wanted to see for myself. Everywhere we go, we've abandoned our people. What has happened to the Iron Legion? Why have you abandoned your posts? Stand down! Your people need you. Why have you abandoned your posts?
All of this culminates with how the Blackstones initiate warriors, and the Warden is left feeling trapped within Apollyon's ranks, with the Obsidian warlord's gaze all but confirming her intentions. I mention all this because while the ending scene of the third mission is meant to introduce Apollyon, it also does a good job of setting up the Warden's character arc for later, and gives the players a brief glimpse into the kind of warlord that would be good for Ashfield, and what the region has instead. To conclude, in the brief scene we see Apollyon introduced, she commands the attention of all watching, and it's clear to the player what kind of person she is. She's a ruthless fighter, an efficient killer, an ally to her Blackstones, and she clearly values those who would rather die fighting than those who surrender. She's also shown to be wounded twice, which shows that regardless of her skill and prowess in battle, she can be harmed. This scene perfectly showcases who the Obsidian Warlord is, and what she's all about, so my hat's off to the writers, and the voice actors' performances really sell the conflicting tones of both the Warden and Apollyon. However, there is a little criticism I have. The Warden knows of Apollyon, and that she is the warlord of the Blackstone Legion. This isn't inherently bad, but given that the player is experiencing these events through the perspective of the Warden, it's a little jarring for this information to be known by the character and not the player, or at least that would be the case for those who ignored the observables, so you can see how this analysis trips itself up a little. This is of course why I chose to analyse the story excluding those elements, and I think when looked at from that perspective, the writers did a good job of showing off their story's most important character. She's fierce and intimidating, utterly merciless and strange in her treatment of those attempting to kill her. A brief rollercoaster of all things Apollyon for the player to digest, with the level perfectly ending with her looking frightening, almost as if she can hear the Warden's thoughts. But that's my opinion, and I'm not a writer, so what do I know? What do you all think of Apollyon's introduction? Do you think the writers did a good job? What do you think could have been done better? Or is it perfect the way it is? I'd love to see what you all have to say in the comments. Thank you all so much for watching the video. I know this was an odd topic to discuss, but I personally think that the game's story and lore is criminally underrated and warrants further analysis. Whether or not this was your preferred kind of content or not, you have my sincerest thanks for sticking through to the end of the video. And remember, no matter what kind of day you're having, never ever forget that you are mighty. See you in the next video. Ciao for now.